And we're live. That was it. Great, 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 great. So it looks like we have Tats and Laurie that are able to join us today, and we still haven't seen Charlie, so we might see him a little bit later. But just to thank you guys for coming, I do appreciate you, Tats and Laurie, for joining us today. And just as I spoke of it, we have Charlie. Perfect. So we've got our 3 contestants today, more otherwise known as guests. But they have very graciously agreed to let me ask them some awkward, we'll say hard questions and answer them publicly for everybody. So thank you guys.
That's a good thanks one. For having us.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to have you here. So I was noticing everybody was doing all these nice little, year look aheads for 2025 or where we've been in 2024. And a lot of them are focused on metrics, money, different things like that, how to increase profits and stuff like that. But things that we don't usually talk about that we're talking more about now are what kind of things we can do to kind of button these things up, right? So on deck today, we're going to be talking about some rad products that can either reduce waste or improve your energy consumption. And then a little bit of HR, right? So how do we even get people to come build with us? How do we get them to stay with us and have a good time and want to be there? And then, of course, what kind of process methods and different things will improve the actual work that our builders are doing, right? So it's not just build the building, but how can we make it better for you to build it? So let's start with introductions, right? So if we want to start, let's do, on my screen, it's Tats, Laurie, and Charlie. So let's go that way.
All right. Thanks, Maria. Yeah, no, my name is Tetsuya Nakagawa. A company called Castagra. We manufacture roof coatings, sustainable roof coatings. Have a podcast as well, which I had you on, Maria, and a bunch of great guests. It's always fun to learn about the construction industry. There's just so much to know, and things are changing all the time. So I'm glad to be part of this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Right on. All right, Miss Laurie.
Hey, I'm Laurie Wright. I work for Morton, so we're a general contractor, been around about 75 years, headquartered out of Birmingham, but we've got divisional offices. We're primarily in the Southeast, work out in Texas. They don't have the Stanleys yet, so I'm using a trade partner that was so gracious to give me one of theirs. Hopefully that one's on deck for our people. But I work in the HR technology space, been here about 12 years, so I have covered everything that can happen in HR, which is a vast array of things in construction. So
it is, including training. That's how I first kind of got in with Laurie, is she was looking for people to be trainers, and I was very happy to volunteer. So thank you for letting me teach.
Absolutely. That is definitely where my passion lies. I think we can always, have more skills and knowledge and just expand that every day.
For sure. And Charlie, now you were at a general contractor, right? And then you switched on me. Oh, you're muted. We can't hear you. Well, it doesn't look like you're muted, but your sound is not coming in. Which is a shame. I need to know what all of these instruments are on your wall. I have questions. Still no. I can't talk about your guitar somewhere. It looks like it's going to happen. That's okay.
Come off mute.
There he is.
So this is the second time Microsoft has done this to me. I got this cool fancy microphone, but it's something web app related. That all the settings are right for an external mic, but I have to kill the external mic. So we'll just go normal.
Thanks,
so Charlie Dunn, keep it simple for today. Get us rolling because conversation's better than knowing anything about my background. 8 years with DPR, but before that, nothing linear in my career. Started in logistics and supply chain. Really started painting houses with my brother. Done both painting. We had up to 25 employees, paid for college. So
there you go.
Some time in tech, back and forth, and now, we'll get to some interesting stuff that I'm working on maybe in the conversation and some of those rad tools. But and then we bumped into each other because of this, riffing off what Laurie said. desire I had to, why do we keep doing training so badly? Like we continue to show up and do things that just don't work. Builders are not going to sit in a chair and look at a screen and watch some PowerPoint and come away smarter, more energized, more enthused. So we built this series of things that Maria did part of it in Denver called Flow State Experience that engage with everything from simple number challenges to variations on different board games to Lego simulation exercise. So I'm really, I think a key thing in how we change perception is this experiential across all, from first engagement, what the experience is like, to what the experience is like coming on project sites, to how do we create more experiential learning where people are doing things rather than being told things.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, looking forward to the talk today.
Yeah, right on. That's a good one. Well, then let's, it looks like we've got people coming in. We've got Leslie joining us. She says, hello. And she's saying again, hello to Lance. So that means he's out in the audience. Super excited for that one. And then Clyde, I'm so glad that you could show up today. He says, looking forward to hearing some viewpoints. And that's exactly what we have. It's a good little group to just share some of their experience. And Noah, good morning. Hello. And so let's go on then to our first little bit, because I know our friend Tats here has another engagement. So he so graciously was able to give us some of his time, but he does have to leave about 15 minutes early. So we're going to kick it off with Tats. So Tats, really, what kind of rad products do you have around? You talked about sustainability, but what does that really mean for you? And what does it mean for our builders?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sustainability is a word that's been kicked around, a lot and stuff like that. But I think I had on one of my guests that talked about sustainability and how it can improve cash flow. And that was kind of the first time I really thought of it like that.
Yep.
So that was very interesting. There's a lot of sustainable products, more and more that are, performing better than some of the incumbent products. And I guess, my guest's point was that, some of these sustainable products would speed up, the permitting process or getting paid process, and, sort of cut down some walls of moving things forward. And I thought that was great because I know, if you're a sustainable leader in an organization, that's your priority. But maybe if you're on the finance side, you're not thinking in connecting those dots. And I thought that's a very cool thought they had, that sustainability. Now that the product quality and the deliverance and the risk is lower, that you can improve cash flow. So that was kind of a new thing that I kind of ran across. I mean, from our company perspective, I think being a coatings company, there's just so many things that you could be creative about in terms of you can build new things, but you could also revive things as well by using things as coatings that would extend the life of things. So that's kind of where our brain is. I think as an industry itself, roofing isn't one that's in the past embraced sustainability, and that's changing more and more. You talked about energy consumption. There's been a big effort to try to improve solar panels from a technology standpoint, from an installation standpoint. So they've made some strides there. But I'm excited. Excited because we host a scholarship every year that encourages sort of people to write in what they want to pursue in terms of sustainability and innovation. And our program director or founder of that program, Megan, like every year, the quality of the applicants from the schools and the quality of the ideas and the vision, is amazing. So it's kind of exciting to see, that's continuing to grow.
Yeah, I love that you guys do that. And I'd love some more information about it. We could share it with the later on. That would be great. And I love that you also mentioned how you can't always get the finance department on team, right? Or on the train until you mention dollars and cents, right? And then you mentioned dollars and then it makes sense for them. So, and I actually got, what do you say, harped on or something. Somebody's trying to give me a hard time for my December live stream because it was for scheduling. And I tell you, and the name is Contact Financials, right? But scheduling has everything to do with money, honey. everything. And so does the products you pick out, the things that you're doing for these owners, Mr. and Mrs. Owner. You know, they want to see that their costs are coming down and different things like that. And I'm sure a few of them, you know, aren't exactly excited to hurt the earth. And so the idea of being able to get longer life, especially out of something like a roof, is pretty important. It is. Now, I did have one more question though for you, Tats, and I've got it. This is a selfish one, but I want to hear more about it because we got a little bit before we started, but not too much. I warned you. You had a warning shot. So a few years ago, when I actually worked at a roofing supplier, I don't really know this person, but I did. And so one of the things I saw while I was there was the idea of solar panel shingles. And I thought, oh, that's really rad. And how's it going to be, you know, for cost? And then on top of that, I hear you've got to have a pretty large battery on your premises, right? And people aren't exactly excited about putting them in their house. So since 2018, what have you seen there, Tats?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in that area, but I certainly like the presentations of all that stuff looks very nice. I mean, I love the concept. I think as with any new innovations, initially they struggle, right? You know, installations, this cost and stuff like that. But, you know, I'm convinced they're going to continue to improve that area and, you know, find different ways to make it seamless. You know, I must imagine that they're making progress because I see more and more companies jumping into it, trying to do things. So I think at some point, I think they're going to have more market traction. Sure. But I think certainly on the basic installation side, I think there's been a lot of improvements and ideas around that, you know, because I think with the solar installation and the roof, usually the friction point is the warranty, right? When you install things on the roof, when you punch holes, who's responsible? What happens if there's an issue? And I think those things, I think over time, we're gonna resolve those better, or maybe they have, but I think that's always been a friction point. And I see some signs that they're improving that. So,
well, good. Maybe one day, right? All right. So, anything else for ways to reduce waste or improve energy consumption? If I can say the whole word, Charlie. I know that you like some of these words, right?
Well, so I have a question because this to me is a fundamental. Do you currently track percentage of your product that is shipped to a site that actually becomes part of the building versus percentage of your product that becomes waste, you know, excess cut off, damaged, haul off?
Yeah. I mean, for us, you know, we're liquid applied, so people use how much they need. So there isn't a whole lot of waste because it's a liquid product, and we're 100% solid. So, but I know what you're saying. You know, I think tracking at the site level or tracking at the sort of manufacturer level in terms of ingredients, alternatives, I see like software and tools kind of advancing in that. Like our sort of manufacturing isn't as complicated, but I can see that being extremely beneficial for, you know, a process that has, you know, a ton of different components. So I do see progress there.
That's an interesting one. So then now I'm curious, Laurie, what do you guys do? Because you have like a whole sustainability department, right?
Yeah, so I mean, Jackie heads up our sustainability efforts, but we know it's not a one-man show. So we have separated it out, you know, to have like an employee engagement group and a green building services that's just kind of helping with field operations, you know, to make sure that we're getting all the team members engaged and waste tracking and continuously improving the, you know, way that we're tracking that with technology. But I mean, you know, my heart lies in data, so we can't improve anything if we don't have those metrics. So, I mean, that's where, you know, we constantly are going back to what does the data say? What do the studies say?
Yeah, and that's really hard when you're talking about Charlie, you know, tracking to the actual job site, right? And somebody who's got 10 job sites to monitor will have an easier time than somebody who's got 250 job sites to monitor, right? So that's a different one. Very good. All right. And then, oops, I didn't want to miss Leslie earlier. She's given Charlie some kudos, but I think it was when we were done with introductions. Great point about, what is this word? I can't pronounce today.
Experiential.
Experiential. See, this is why I have friends. Thank you.
The experience of the training.
Awesome. Okay. Well,
if I could, one more before we move off. So,
please do.
Tats, have you put together EPDs for your products for carbon and measurement?
Oh, Tats, you're muted. We want to hear you.
We haven't, but we're going to move in that direction.
Yes, I think that's something that's coming. We see it in Europe, moving this way, but and then Cal Green and Greenville, New York City. But so some of this effort hopefully will become lighter because you'll have material suppliers that essentially will document here's how sustainable we are and the materials we use and how we manufacture it, and then it'll transition to, and this is where it does become a process burden for the site teams. How's it shipped? How's it stored? How's it installed? We're even seeing, like, I've got some friends with a company, Site Hub in Denmark. They're actually changing their installation windows to reduce things like the need for temp heating. In the South, maybe it's not big on our radar, but in countries where they literally have to insulate buildings and pump in a lot of temp heat, it's a huge impact if they can shift and do certain work in the summer versus during the winter. For the
extreme weather is a talking point as well right now with everything, and just understanding how those changes can impact material performance and like you said, conditions, right? So
that's really a valid point, right? Is the middle, and we saw it really awfully up in was that Tennessee and the Carolinas, right? Is that they didn't have hurricane grade anything, and why would they, right? But that's the kind of stuff that people in Florida are definitely worried about. And you build your buildings differently. You select different products. You have, different thickness sometimes of concrete and other things like that. And so then when you move that into extreme cold or extreme heat, then you get to the point where all your building materials are going to behave differently because they're in a different environment. That was a really good one. So I was curious about that, though, Charlie, because I was wondering about what you were thinking about. And you're thinking about Europe. We're a little bit behind, aren't we?
No, I mean, there's good innovation anywhere. It's just they've and it's been both a government as well as a lot of your larger owners converging on, hey, this is the way we want to do some of these things.
That's interesting.
I think too, my personal journey being in Switzerland, watching the glaciers when I was recovering from a biking fiasco, was that, hey, growing up in the South, had air conditioned car, air conditioned school, air conditioned places to work. Any variance in temperature was a blip. I don't know if anybody's done backyard gardening. We did learn one summer that, hey, summer night temperatures aren't going down. So certain things were more of a challenge. Like, that's the closest thing as a human being I could tell you I came to saying, okay, there's some change going on that's impacted something I was trying to do. Then you go to Switzerland where they got 2,000 glaciers at risk. 10 to 20% of those are high risk, which means if they fail, they're losing a town or a road or tunnel or infrastructure. And so, and they've watched this happen like before their eyes. It's a very tangible transition. So I think that's part of what maybe drives certain climate zones of the world also to be a little bit more in tune. But to me, the fundamental thing, whether it's how we're measuring it, for things like LEED or now with the EPD environmental declarations, there is now a real tie to that financial incentive.
Oh, yeah.
That, I used to say, if you're not paying attention to water and power, you're going to miss something. And now I say it's carbon, water, and power that are going to be drivers for how we do stuff.
There you go. And tell me a little bit more about what you mean by carbon. Like, we're going to be watching carbon emissions or carbon usage?
The embodied carbon measurements. So things like, products like mass timber or, a greener steel that is produced with less carbon intensity, or we're starting to see some concrete batch plants come online that are making use of greener sources of energy, because concrete can be very, energy intensive. But and there's some very big bets being made on things like mass timber to take advantage of what a lot of these enterprise owners see on the horizon as some pretty significant tax and carbon offset. This is, contact financials. This will get your attention, like 300x ROI.
Yeah.
Where they're like, okay, how can we do more mass timber?
Yeah, that's a big number, and that will definitely get some folks' attention for sure. So I am really curious to see how it all goes. Some of my more favorite ones, and I know it's really, really hard for folks to do because you got to have space, right? But the folks that will actually take those leftover materials from a job and then be able to warehouse them and instead of just putting them in the dumpster, right? But it's usually the smaller outfits that I see who do that, or they have what they call the yard, right? And they keep it in the yard. And some of the things you can actually reuse, right? So if you, things like buying your own scaffolding or specialty tools or big ones, like maybe your own crane or something like that, you've still got to have space for it. So
it's not just space. A lot of times, because I've been pulling this thread for a long time.
Yeah.
People will argue that the labor is more expensive than the value of the material.
They will.
And so it's getting to a dynamic where that is no longer a barrier to doing what's the smart thing. This came up a lot in advocating for prefab and offsite solutions, where you'd be asked this question: well, what's the lowest first cost, or what's the lowest cost? Because lowest first cost to me is idiotic. Head in the sand. We'll never get smarter thinking. But my response became lowest first cost for who or for what? Because if we're talking lowest first cost for the planet, it's going to be an offsite process where we can get our waste down to 1% to 2%.
Yep.
General manufacturing expectation is 2% or less waste. World class, you get to 1%, and then they start driving it down even more. And their recyclable intensity is higher because they're have point of collection opportunities to minimize that. Whereas and you experience that in Denver, still traditional construction, we're at 30% or higher material waste on site.
At least, yeah.
And I've had estimators tell me, like for drywall boards, which is even a higher waste percentage, it's just dust and paper.
Yeah.
And it's a valid argument. Like the cost for a laborer to try to cut a board and nest it, meaning save the pieces that we might reuse later, and then figure out where they can reuse them.
Sure.
But then that's a place to introduce something that's kind of a rad use of technology. So Hypar, started by the same guy who built out Dynamo. So Hypar is a general design platform, but while at DPR, we were able to pass him kind of the human intelligence of how we laid out drywall. And in Hypar, they were able to take that and then reconfigure the layout and intelligently make as few cuts as possible. And then when there were cuts made, figure out where you could reuse boards that have been cut and potentially even cut the stuff out of the field and bring it to the field. And I believe there's a fascinating, if I'm not mistaken, Robbins and Morton. I may be getting you guys confused with Jay Dunn. Apologies. But anyway, where this offsite
never
dropped waste percentage a tremendous amount. But again, normally we'd say, well, but that's just too much effort. Like, however, with this technology like Hypar, now we can take a traditional, here's how we would do it. Hypar can run it through and start to save 10 to 15% and get better field efficiency, because now the guy in the field is not having to think about the layout.
Right.
It's done for him. Stuff shows up pre-cut, and then he's just driving screws. So it becomes a place where this started with, how do we go after this waste, ended up with, it's not only beneficial for the material waste, but it's also more beneficial for production in the field. And I think you'll see this kind of convergence, these multipliers, where we get a benefit in multiple places that really start to propel us forward.
Yeah, I think so. And then where multiple people can see that value, right? And so I wish I knew who this was, but they said like sewing patterns. Yes. So you've got your, I don't know if I've never actually used a pattern. I've procured a couple, but it just kind of seems a little bit. So it hits this little outline, right? And you cut it out, and it shows you how to shape all your pieces, and then you're able to kind of put them together, make your sleeves, whatever it is. So that's what they mean there. And then here's a good one. Can AI be used to lay out drywall pieces to reduce waste? So that's exactly what we're saying, is that the technology is starting to be out there. It's just up to us to use it or not. So one thing that always struck me as a little bit weird when I was a young child, the idea of, we'll just say, mass consumerism, and where we are right now and where we've been really is more like where I hope we've been, because I want it to be past tense, right? But the idea that you can just get whatever you need and get another one and another one and another one and throw it away, don't take it with you, throw that charcoal out that we took camping, we'll just get another bag at the house. Different things like that. And it just always struck me as weird, because I thought, if looking at the planet, right, this is the one we have, and I'm just looking around here and I don't see anything else. And so my point here is that the resources are finite, and you cannot use them in an infinite manner and expect them to just continually be available for you, right? So at some point, you're going to run out of everything, including dirt and water, if you continue on that path. And so I love that this is a way to kind of, one of our biggest things that we need is building. We need our builders and we need our buildings that we're in, but how can we make that better and live in harmony, right, with the planet? Because that's the only one we have. Unless you're friends with the guy that makes the rocket that's going to Mars, right? Then maybe you can waste whatever you want. Not really, but that's your business. So let's bring on to the next one. Why would a builder stay with a company then? So like, we know that there's, 650,000 something people that we need, and we're looking for them. We need them. And so the ones that we have, we want to keep. So what kind of stuff are we doing for our people? Why do they want to stay with us, Laurie?
Well, I think there's a lot of elements here to unpack, but I've boiled it down to a couple that I know that we really concentrate on. First thing is just, training our people and explaining, the value of the building, the value that they bring, the value that a team brings. We're just kind of constantly reiterating, like, we want to explain to them what they're doing and how it fits in the bigger picture, but also invest in them, right? The age old, what if we train them and they leave? What if we don't and they stay? We really want to convince them that we're putting all of this into them and there's value in return for us, for the company, for the owner, for everybody involved, for the city that we're doing the building in. There's so much there. The other thing is just having high communication. I mean, we talk about technology, and I feel sometimes, like on a daily basis, I'm so sideways with so many people because of technology. You have to communicate on 18 different platforms, the same thing, 18 different ways. Sometimes it's different languages, different ways that we're presenting something. But I mean, it remains the same. You've got to communicate at all levels, whatever that looks like for your company. And you got to be able to make sure that, everyone understands, not only are they a part of it, you've explained that, but you're constantly communicating, the value that they bring, what opportunities they have at the company, what benefits they have at the company, what we're doing as a company. I mean, that transparency is just so important, I think, at any level. And then, constantly just praising and reinforcing that we're doing positive things, or, that someone is valued. I mean, no one wants to go to work and leave every day feeling like they've accomplished nothing. And it doesn't have to be an email every day that's like, that was great, thanks. But people want to hear like, hey, you're a part of something bigger, and we're glad you're here. And so, I mean, that praise and that reinforcement for those people, and whatever it looks like, for some, it's monetary. For some, it's just a, hey, good job. For some, it's a, you were working safe today, and we all really appreciate that. I mean, it looks different person to person. So you've got to have those relationships, but I think that's really important. And then my final one is just trust. I mean, people have to trust in you as a company, trust in your teams, trust in your integrity, trust that you're doing things right by people. If you don't have that trust, you just are going to lose people left and right. And, it'll be for 10 cents down the road. It won't take much. So, I mean, you got to have it. And, there's probably a million ways to cut all of those. I will say, at the core of me, look at your data on all these things. You'll probably have turnover data. You can find out some of those reasons people leave. You can have data on your communication pieces and who's reading them and when and where and how and all these things. You really can dive into it pretty deep to make sure that you're doing the right things.
Yeah.
Those are kind of my top thoughts.
Your top thoughts. Well,
I don't have many, so.
You have plenty of good thoughts. Otherwise, you wouldn't be anywhere near where you are now. I know that to be true. So one of the things I do want to highlight, though, because I have, now that I'm out in the big wide world, I don't always see a training and development department, right? Some of these companies are just out here building their best that they can with what they have. And so sometimes you'll see a couple of documents maybe on the company website, or Shirley or Dan down the hall know exactly how to do that job. And so they're going to train with you one day or something like that. But there's nothing official or no kind of, we'll say, like, big place, depository of these documents all together. And so one thing that I really, really enjoyed about Robbins and Morton was not only getting to contribute, right? That was important to me as an employee. I got to contribute to teaching the classes. And then also any kind of class I ever wanted was sitting right there. And they do an excellent job of it, which is talking about communication. They had an entire, and I'm sure still do, class course, right? That you can flip through and look through for the year. So you can make your plans about life. You can say, hey, Laurie, I didn't see a class about XYZ. Can you please make sure it gets on the list for the fall? Right? Or something like that. And so I just think it's an incredible way to outreach to our employees. And if they don't know what they're expected of them, how can we hold them accountable for anything, or use those metrics to say, yes, this is a good job, or not, right?
No, that's exactly right. And to Charlie's point earlier, it's getting harder and harder to keep people's attention span. I mean, we're in the age of TikTok, and I think the other day we're down to about 3 seconds that people can pay attention before off on another thing. So we've had to start, modifying all of our trainings. We can't bring people off site and sit them in a room for 6 hours and read a policy to them. It's just not effective. I mean, so I'm lucky that I have a bunch of eager people that want to teach, but really I have to do so much more pre-planning now than I used to sit down and say, okay, what are these key learning objectives and how are we keeping the audience engaged? Well, what are they going to leave with saying that this was a value add to the million other things that I needed to do, right? For my site, my schedule, my people, all the other things. Where was the value that I'm walking away saying, wow, I'm glad I'm taking this with me because it'll better me. So, I mean, that's been something for, the last year that we've really had to kind of back up and say, what resources are they leaving with? What objectives, what's kind of that, I guess, gap analysis that they have, which is tough. You get 30 people in a room that are 0 years to 30-year superintendents, and you're trying to teach the same stuff. You have to adjust.
Yeah. You've got to be able to read the room, right? And so this is an interesting point too, because Laurie tells the truth. When I first started with my classes that she so graciously let me teach, I did them at 3.5. It was a 3.5 hour course. You did bing, bang, boom. We're doing everything. And then you left. And what with the feedback that we got, and I'm, was fortunate enough to live in a place where not only we collected feedback, but we listened to it. And it was, this is too long. I didn't need all this information. Why did I come here? This kind of stuff. And so we ended up breaking them down from there, right? And so okay, well, here's this one module, and you guys come see everything that's in this module. And so being able to kind of pivot that way. And another thing that I found really, we're talking about adding value to these folks, is to not show them a PowerPoint or anything like that at all. It's to maybe talk about, have the actual website or whatever it is that you're talking about up on the screen, walk through it, do all that, and then invite them to also participate, right? Have them bring their computers, log into their projects, not a test project that you made just for the class, which I've done, but have them log into their own projects. And then that way they're learning about their own stuff that's pertinent to their lives specifically, right? So now, Charlie, I know that you have found this information out because you're very interactive. So I had a great time being Chewbacca. I don't know how many of you know this, but I actually got to be Chewbacca while I was building Legos, and it was fantastic. I'm not sure my team was ready for it.
Well, the point of that really is nobody's ready for it. And it's meant to kind of describe what we do to people on a normal project site. we show up. A lot of people haven't worked together before. Actually, I was doing this at Penn State, and first time I had somebody admit that they were 22 and had never touched Lego.
Okay.
Young lady from Iran. I was like, okay, that's fair. But then the same person at the end made this comment. She said, I would hesitate to do this with people that didn't know each other. And it was frustrating because I didn't realize that there were hidden agendas or objectives. Those two simple challenges, like what if we could just show up and work with people that we've worked with before, we understand, we like each other, we trust each other. And then what if we could be transparent and I was like, hey, what if we just solve those two things? What might happen in our industry? But yeah, so what you experienced was that goal, like let's put people where it's real. This is what it normally feels like. And then how might we create some different strategy without modifying some of the conditions we face to get a different outcome? And it's, and started by working with a seasoned superintendent who was like, we used to do more lean simulation role-playing onboarding, and now we've gone to more classroom style. He said the content's good, it's just it doesn't seem to land, especially with my trade partners. And so it's like, well, Tom, let's talk about what you used to do and let's do more of that. And a lot of it really is just like hold yourself accountable. It sounds like you guys did a great job getting feedback. Hold yourself accountable to the audience, to the student, right? To the intended outcome. I think we're going to see a shift. I mean, this is not just in construction, across the entire educational landscape, but that's different topic for a different day.
No, but that is a good one though, because if the student, right, no matter who they are, old, young, anybody, if they don't walk away understanding what you were trying to tell them, did you really teach? So that's kind of like where are you a teacher if they didn't understand what you said when they left? When they go home, what are they doing with what you told them? And so if the message didn't land, right, there's hope, but you just have to alter that message so that you can reach that audience in a different way. And, to Laurie's point, like what is that they need? Do they need the PowerPoint available online or attached after class? Do they need one-on-one class? Do they need it presented in their first language, right? These are all really big deals for people as far as learning and retaining information. So that's a good one. What about Tats? Do you have anything with training? What do you guys do over there?
I mean, we had Jeff in-house that developed the online training thing. We used to do sort of live training, and then we switched to on-demand because we just found out that, when we were holding like trainings every 2 weeks, it wasn't enough because there was always that project or requirement that just came up and like, we need it now, right? And so basically, was it going to be good? Was it going to be boring? And how to keep it engaging? And I think the team spent a lot of time sort of thinking through how to do that, right? How to deliver something and get feedback. And I think the hardest thing for us was to find a platform that was flexible enough that, could incorporate enough of the elements. But, we're a smaller company. So, but wasn't huge in terms of costs and sort of getting it set up. So I think there's a value in taking the time to really make sure that you're working with the right tools, like instead of rushing into a technology, because on the other side of it, I think if you run into an issue later, I mean, like starting from scratch really sucks. So luckily, we found a technology that was good, and now it's expanded to other languages, and we're going to use that learning platform for like in-house training as well. So just because the teams learn how to use it, so now that they're applying it to distributor onboarding, sales training, all that stuff. So it's been fun.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good one to go back to Laurie, because in the past, what has it been now, 2-3 years, you guys went through that whole process of identifying what was going to be the right platform for you guys. And I just want to plug on-demand training, because something I didn't mention before is the value of recording, right? So I am one person, and if I am the person that has the knowledge, that means I have to go to all of these different places and do all of that. And that can get expensive. And also, I'm just one person. And so one way to kind of clone yourself, this is the kind of stuff I look for, is how can I clone myself in daily life, but record it, right? have the people show up that want to come in person, make sure you hit record, and then boom, you can load it into your platform or your company website. And that on-demand feature is really valuable for those companies where we're saying, okay, if you don't have your own learning and development team, right, that might be a little bit too much for you. You're not ready yet. You're not big enough yet. But being able to have that one person hit record instead of telling every person that comes in the door is a lot different. And then they can just go ask follow-up questions, right?
Well, I love to Tat's point. I'm always the one saying, like, a good technology won't fix a broken process. So that tool, when you're going out and saying, hey, we need something to better deliver, training on demand, the Veruca Salt method, right? I want it now.
Yeah.
You've got to figure out what's the best tool that enhances your process, because good technology, the best training platform, without a good process or good, definition of what you're trying to achieve, rendered useless.
Yeah, it's going to bomb. And, I'd have to say that's the same in other platforms too, right? Let's say even if you get Procore and you've got 10 different offices doing 10 different processes, you're not going to get along in Procore just because you bought Procore, right? You've got to go back to those 10 offices, decide what's best and better and whatever, and going to be carried forward, what's actually needed to stay and be different and have 2 versions maybe, whatever that deal is. But that's where it's got to start, is what are we putting into the computer? Because if we put trash in, we get trash out. So very good. We've got somebody who I still wish I knew. We call that just-in-time training, but we have found nobody watches recorded on demand. I was probably one of the most watchers. I don't know. I saw the data one time.
I was going to say, I love this sentence, because my next question would be, what does the data say? How many, what's your definition of nobody watches it?
Yeah, right.
Because that's where, we've dug in before and been like, oh, only 5, people have watched this training and it's all one job title. And we're like, oh, wait, the data really isn't telling us that nobody watches us. It's telling us that one job title has a high interest. So that's a moving target though on the on-demand. I have walked by and seen people press play and walk away. I hate that for them, but
or go to sleep. It was a risk episode, okay?
We have a test at the end of it. So, and then there's a stick in terms of, going through a warranty process. They have to go through that process as well. So there's a little bit, but I know what you're talking about. We're constantly thinking to make sure that, it is a value. We have a thing where it's like, what you like about it, what you didn't like about it. So I think in order, when they early set up the training, they were very sort of specific on always asking for feedback, what made sense, what didn't. And I think they continued to do that. But I mean, it's a challenge, right? You have to, with anything, when people get too used to something, or they have too many of them on the thing, then, there may be corners cut. So, we're kind of thinking about that as well. But Maria, I think roughly maybe about now I have to dive off, but
that's a good one. We appreciate your end contribution there. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tats.
Yeah, thank you, Maria.
And good luck on your next one.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. I think it's also important to remember there isn't a one size fits all. This really struck me, and it helped me in working with somebody that I found tremendously frustrating. And it was a test just on, and there's so many different people who talk to you about learning styles, but it was 3 main styles and a test to see where you're stronger, or not styles, affinities. So one is people that like learning from talking to other people.
Yep.
And then a second is people that like learning by doing their own research, right? So that second category, that's where they may go read the online PowerPoint, or they may go dig into the manual. Early in my career in tech, there's a guy who said, have you read the manuals? And he would laugh because almost nobody had. That was
right.
One first thing he said. And then the third is people that want to go do stuff, try stuff, like prove it on their own, like a distrust. And a lot of your builders, I think, fall in that third category. So they're going to almost want to do it and be at that point of failure. And then they want a specific reference just for that one thing they're trying to do.
Yes, they do.
So I like what you were saying earlier about creating more bite-sized. But anyway, essentially what I found out was I'm more in that third category. Occasionally I'm in the second category, depending on the topic. I'm rarely in that first social category. But this guy I was struggling with, he pegged out of everybody in the room in that social category. And so what I realized was a lot of times he was just calling around to learn.
Yep.
And now I could understand why we had some of the conversations we did. It
Yeah.
wasn't that he was just hunting for whatever. He was, no, this is mentally how he tries to learn stuff. So, you know, that being said, I do think there's a fundamental that's universal, and that is we experience, and then we understand.
Yes.
We cannot expect to create understanding and then people go do.
That part.
Which is why I've, you know, and again, it was funny you mentioned scheduling early in the industry. I was learning Primavera, and there used to be these 3-day in-person courses and 2-day in-person courses.
Oh, wow.
And what we find is, wow, people just, it's gone. It's too much.
Yeah.
So you had to schedule your project, then you're trying to recall 5 days of it.
Yeah, and you got all these manuals, and but it's rather than bite size on a project with a mentor you can call.
Yep.
You know, or better yet, and we started, you know, engaging this way where we do, if it was like a newer type of technology, a project focused workshop.
There you go.
So we're going to show up and we're going to actually do this on the project, on our stuff, with stuff that matters. And then it was a little stickier, and had higher interest.
Yes, they do love that. And so then here's because I was leaving this up just so that I wouldn't forget. But my question then would be, if you don't have anybody watching them, do they know they're there? Right? Or to Charlie's point earlier, I think it was Charlie or Tats, somebody said, you know, you've got so many in there. Are they labeled properly? Does somebody know what they're going to learn when they click on that particular course or document, PDF that you've made, whatever it is? Do they know what value they're going to get from it? And then, of course, that last question is, when they are watching it, are they getting that value? Or are they watching that video and then going back and telling their friends, that was crap, don't go in there and watch our videos. They're totally they need to be updated. Right. And then to Charlie's point, I cannot tell you the majority of my calls, I'd have to say that I was fielding when I was at a specific contractor were because the builder was in the moment. Right. And so this is how I used to joke that I worked 365 days of the year, but it was because they were stuck if they couldn't get the technology question answered. And that's the last thing I'd ever want for a builder. And so my thought was, if they're working on Easter, Christmas Eve, whatever that day was, and they're stuck and they need to finish their thing, I can go in there and click a button or click, clack, and answer, hey, click here. Right. And be available that way. So this is another one. And definitely those bite-sized pieces, because somebody does not want to watch an hour and a half long or even 30 minutes. They don't want to watch 30 minutes when they're in the act doing it. They just need to know where to click. So let's see. And it looks like that may have been Rob Sawyer earlier. So we've got Leslie, and she says, great point about the challenges of recorded on demand. I had that same conversation with a few clients this week. The live version is in demand. Another way to do it is a hybrid model, some parts recorded for on demand, and then there is a live component for interactive discussion. So kind of, you know, bringing that laptop, bringing their project to the class, right?
I mean, the age old, what did we do when we were in school, right? You had homework. You went home, you did it. You brought it back. You discussed it the next day. Like, I don't know how somehow I got in the corporate world and that went away. Like, but
yeah,
you can leave a class and give people some things to do and then check back with them in 30, 60, 90 days and see how that retention was, or bring it to a next session and discuss it. I mean, that's make them go do the work and bring it back. I love that.
Yeah. Or even the idea that they have to go do the work, right? Because something like Procore or just teaching a new software that you guys bought at a company, they've got to have more reps, right? They can't just learn how to pick up the barbell. They've got to do it multiple times so that they can get used to it. They get proficient, they get more comfortable, and then they can show their peers how to do it. Right? Yeah, that's that value.
Takes tons of time. I love too when people are like, oh, it's so difficult. I'm like, that's correct. Because I think people want to be like, it's so easy, but it's not. Like technology is hard. Like it is on a curve of learning. Like, so, you know, I always tell people with the new software, I hope you're going to get frustrated. Let me just set the bar for you. You're going to be frustrated. It's new, right? Like, I'm positive the first person that went from a horse and buggy to a car wasn't like, done. I got this. There was a curve to it. And then you realized how much quicker, efficient, dashboard abilities, all these things that you were like, wow, I see what this offers now. I'm
Mhm.
really glad I bought in, and I'm continuously, learning, giving feedback, moving it forward. So
Yeah.
you should be frustrated.
You should be. And you just brought me all the way back to 1902. So I'd like to just make sure everybody knows that when those cars first came out, it was scary. And that's what we're saying. Like anything new is okay. Like that is supposed to be scary because it's different and new. But then once you start getting those reps in, you've got somebody that you can call or a short video that you can watch to just kind of remind you of that specific process that's just 3, 4, 5 clicks, and then go on your way. Right. So let's see, and we might.
If I could, I just got to challenge something.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I believe, yes, there is a natural change and resistance to change, but as an industry in construction, we put up with way too much really bad software.
Oh,
We force people to do inhumane things, and when you're talking about is it hard, this came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like the transition to this to the touchscreen and the UI.
Yeah.
Because of the focus on the simple, elegant interface and getting rid of clutter and making it. And I've also often started talking about like if you can go mobile first on certain things, you're going to end up in a better place.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, your data lovers, and I'm one of them. We'll stack up a whole lot of stuff, but the guy in the field, he wants to see 1 or 2 things, and ideally he wants to see it with the intuitive. Okay, this is what I'm going to do about it. He's not there just to scan through somebody's dashboard because they thought all this stuff was important. So having that discipline to say, all right, are we creating humane experiences?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to shift to a little plug that kind of crosses from material to this. Why do people stay with a builder? I think it's when, and there's a lot of reasons. Number one to me is purpose. Like if you got a purpose, most people are going to keep showing up through some of the hard times. But we're at a point now where I think the technology can start to limit some of this inhumane work.
Yes.
I'm an advisor with a company, Crane.tech, and they're focused on material. So I'm passionate about that.
Yep.
Like, how do we make material flow better? They've got one study where PEs or PMs average 16 hours a week managing material.
Oh, wow.
That was making sure it was ordered, making sure there weren't any holds or delays, checking on long lead items, R5 submittals, like all that stuff. With the Crane platform, integrated, simpler UI, data that talk to each other. So not where, okay, data's over here, I'll put that in Excel. I'll make a phone call, I'll put that in Excel. Data's over there, I'll put that in Excel, right? That's inhumane.
It
that's
is.
The human being becomes the API, which is absurd. But we do that all the time because we stand up all these little things. Anyway, so Crane comes in, converges all that. Nugget at 16 hours went to 2.5 hours a week.
Yeah, it did.
12.5% of the work. Now that doesn't mean that people are out of work. No, there's still a construction project to manage.
Yeah, there could be more strategic than they are, like you said, a human API. I mean, I like, and no, and that's such a great case study of taking a look at the whole process and wondering what tool will help this, not what technology, not what software, not what, because it could end up being a human, but what tool drastically increases, and removes some of this waste. And I'm going to write down human API because, wow, the amount of times that I've told people, I'm like, if you want to use Excel, also, I think it's a great tool. A lot of people are like, I'm going to say, but if you're not using like a Power Query or building out your databases to be intertwined with your data all coming in and flowing into one place with an extended, column base of all of your data, then you're just using it as a repository, right? It's exactly like someone who puts it in Word or PowerPoint. It's all the same. Excel's capabilities are for truly looking at your data and telling a story. So if you're not if you're not using it as a tool to put everything in and really query out what exists in all elements of your process, it just becomes human APIs.
It's a human API. I do love that. And I knew Laurie was going to love it as soon as you said like the data integrates, right? And so that's one place that we get really excited because if you can take, like, if we can enter this information one time, and I'll take Procore as an example, and of course the money, honey. But if you put that contract in one time, we should be able to have the computer, software, technology, API calls, whatever it is you want to call it. The human puts it in one time. The software platforms You shouldn't have them on deck unless they're connecting to your other platforms. So that one time in Procore gets sent to Sage, it gets sent to Textura, it gets sent to anywhere else it needs to go. And then somebody can data dump it into Excel and have everything that they need there, and then hook something like Power BI up to that Excel and then be able to do more there. But we should only have that person touching it one time.
Yeah, that source of truth. We have worked really hard over the years on source of truth and then mapping out where does that source of truth go to and from. Because I think a lot of people, unfortunately, when you do software, one person helped get it all up and running. So
Yep.
Charlie, in your instance, you walk away and the person's like, wait, where did that information come from that's going in? Where is it going out to? People often forget, document, there's value in the documentation. Document that process so somebody knows where information is coming from and going to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's another little plug, and there's a lot of these tools popping up now, but these AI agents. So Crane has one that you can, any of the material, you can just freeform ask it questions, whether it's a mobile phone with text or a web browser. And then here comes, okay, these are the submittals, these are the drawings, these are the spec sheets. And what you ask about is now highlighted in the document. So it's a couple of simple points on some data projects that I learned from some really smart people in the nuclear industry that I tried to bring to construction. One where I touched on, touch it once.
Yeah.
Right? The machine works for us. We don't work for the machine.
That's right.
So we're going to touch it once. But then this ability to reduce the effort, get greater value. Ask a natural question, and then everything you need to know is curated and brought to you. You're not digging through, I have to log in here, then log in there, then go find this printout and hope it's the right version. No, we can get real-time data to work for us.
Yeah, that's a good one. And so I was worried that we'd run out of time, but it sounds to me like we've kind of talked about this last point throughout the call, right? And so what kind of process methods or ideas are going to be able to improve the work? And so we talked a little bit about tools. We talked about how important it is to pick out the right platform for your team. It could be the right platform for the globe, but is it the right platform for your team? Right? That one, and then getting buy-in. So that's not something I heard Charlie kind of hint at it, is that, you can't have upper management see the commercial for the platform, buy the platform without, having somebody from the project team level and mid evaluate it also, right? And then have them involved with that implementation. Because then they're going to be, we're talking about going peer-to-peer learning. And if you're on the job site, hey, do you know how to do this? Well, yeah, I sure do. Let me show you real quick. And so then it's kind of like set up, and it's what do they call it? Grassroots, right? Where we all decided that this new platform is the right choice for us, and we're all going to learn it together, and we're all going to teach each other. Anything you would add there, Charlie, about because I know that you like flow specifically, right? So what kind of things do you see us going towards? You talked a little bit about trends, things coming over from Europe that can come here. So what are you looking forward to this year?
Well, and it seems to me now almost daily, there's new news about AI and agents. But again, finally, we've got the place to put real, technology really to work for us. And so then it comes back to the human fundamentals. This promise of AI that it'll help us get to flow state, reduce that. And there's a guy in there actually for flow. I learned it in manufacturing environments, but now I go more toward what psychology teaches us about it. Nice. A big one is that flow happens between frustration and boredom. Oh. So right now I'd say a lot of our teams are just way too frustrated.
Yeah.
But we don't want to move to the place where there's boredom. So what do we do to eliminate that frustration? And then making sure that there's freedom. You can move, that you're acting correctly. You've got the right information. You've got the right design. You're gonna make money. This is a fundamental, back to contact financials. I think we don't do a good enough job of making sure everybody coming to a job site knows what it takes to make money, and that we're all doing what we can to make sure that happens. When you take care of that basic thing, and a lot of your trust problems go away. Maybe that freedom to move like an athlete or a musician, then focus, not looking at a whole bunch of stuff, but you're focused. And again, this is where I see this, AIs and other systems we put in place that are rules-based machine learning to focus. Okay, don't worry about every RFI submittal. These 3 this week, and we're okay, right?
Yeah.
And the rest can come later. And then feedback, getting systems that give us positive human feedback. Like, again, did we do a good job today or not?
Yeah.
Have we defined that? And if guys know that and girls know that, we're going to have great workforce, great teams, great results. So those fundamental human dynamics, as this technology rises, I think we're going to be able to focus on those human dynamics more.
Yeah. And that brings me in, mine will be super short. I think we'll get kicked off here, but we're going to keep going. I think we get like a 5-minute extra deal here. So mine's short, simple, and sweet is that I'm looking forward to serving these builders, right, in these different ways, because it is a big landscape out there with all of these platforms, and all the salespeople want you to buy their platform. And so I like to stand in the middle and say, tell me more. So Laurie, what about you? And we'll let you take us home here.
Oh gosh, on overall what I picked up from today.
Well, okay, you're right. Let me give you a little bit more. So I guess this last one would just be like, closing thoughts about what you are most excited to see in construction for this year. For me, it's serving, how many people I'll get to serve.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, mine, like I said, always goes back to the data. You can't manage what you can't measure. So integrated data and data telling a story, though, is what's on my forefront for 2025. Just trying to help kind of people as I see them, pull up a spreadsheet. It's almost a challenge for me to say, okay, what data, why, what value, so that we can, so I can help try to get you to a place where you're telling a story so you can make, better improvements for yourself, the company, no matter what project that's for. Let's just, take a look at it, make sure it's clean, nice, and we're doing something with it that's advantageous, right? And not just putting training records into a spreadsheet and calling it a day.
A report, yeah. And you know what I love about that too is to make sure that they're usable, right? Because if why do I care about this report? What's on it that I need? So that's good.
It should be one of the best classes I took was them talking about dashboards. And to Charlie's point, your car dashboard has some of the bigger items being the ones that you really need to zone in on, and there's a reason for that, right?
Yeah. So how's that going?
So that same concept can be applied when you're talking about what these programs or what something or process is doing for your people. Well, what are you highlighting, and is it a value to them to make a change based on that, or to gauge how well or not well they're doing based on that?
Yeah, that part. And so that's where I'll leave it on this note is that I have seen we're talking about the integration of data and how can we make sure it's clean and nice and valuable and all this. But I've seen the end of that story go 2 ways. Number one, people in corporate were looking for a way to monitor their employees. And that's what they're using it for, right? It's kind of like that negative reinforcement of like, hey, your name's on this report this week. And then the second way I've seen it done is where it actually serves the people. And I'll let you guys guess which one of those goes down better, right? So as long as it's meaningful to me and my job, it helps me, then I can help you with your corporate metrics, right? So.
Yep, that trust and transparency. If you're just using it to hurt people.
Yeah, then that's not very people focused, is it?
I'll just make a better number. If you're going to use it against me, I'll put whatever I want on that spreadsheet, right? Which
bingo.
Integrated data. The point of that is you really can't because you got one source of truth. But yeah, if you're just going to use it against me, believe me, I'll figure out a way.
Yeah, I'll figure out a way, or I'll go somewhere else who's not doing that. And so that's what we're talking about, retaining our builders. Are you using your software platforms to help them, or are you using it to like keep track of them and keep what do they call tabs? Keep tabs on them. Yeah. So very good. Well, I had a really awesome time. Thank you guys for coming. And I'm really also excited. I said people I would serve, but I'm also excited to see what you guys and Tats are going to accomplish this year. So good space to be in. I'm so grateful for you guys that are out there, including the ones not on this call, but there's a lot more of you out there that are helping our builders. And so I really appreciate everything.
Hey, thanks. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, for sure. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Appreciate it. See ya.